I apologize if I'm going to be a bit quiet in this review. My dad's gone to sleep. He's really cranky when he's sleepy, and I don't want to get the ass kicking up my life because that would be very, very bad for me. So I'm going to be a bit quieter in this review. I'm going to try to talk as loud as I can, but please bear with me. And yeah, with that little thing out of the way, let's just go to the review. Iron Man 3 was easily my most anticipated film of 2013, and there were a lot of reasons for that. Pretty obvious ones, of course, like Robert Downey Jr. He's probably my favorite actor working in Hollywood. I really like the guy. I think he's a perfect Tony Stark. I like the entire cast of actors they got for each and every character. I really, really liked all of the previous Iron Man films. Iron Man 1's easily he's probably one of my favorite superhero films of all time. Probably one of my favorite films ever, period. Definitely in my top five, along with the likes of, Batman Begins and Star Wars and stuff like that. I actually like Iron Man 2 a lot more than other people. That film gets a lot of shit. It does have its problems, but I still think it's a lot better than a lot of people give it credit for. So Iron Man 3 was obviously a big deal to me, and the film, at first when I got out of the theater, I just thought to myself, wow, this was brilliant, this was amazing, it was such a good time and stuff. And if I had done a review of that film coming out of the theater, I probably would have regretted it because I didn't actually put any thought into the film itself. It was sort of that thing where, you're caught up in all the hype and stuff, and you're kind of high off the film sort of thing. You're still excited about it and stuff, and you're not really thinking clearly. And then when I was in school the next day, I started thinking about the film, putting aside all the funny stuff and that, and actually thinking about the plot objectively and all the things they said before release. I just came to the realization that it's not a bad film by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not a particularly good one either. It's just okay. And the biggest thing that disappointed me here is actually the marketing, because before release, Kevin Feige, Shane Black, all of these actors, all of these trailers, they basically showed us a more serious tone for Iron Man 3. And all of the crew that was working behind the film, they were talking about how Tony was going to have to go underground. He was going to have to face some inner turmoil. He was going to have to grow as a person to defeat the greatest threat he's ever known, a threat that's taken everything from him, and he's going to have to go back to basics. That is probably the biggest load of crap I've heard since Mass Effect 3 boasted about how your choices would actually affect the game's ending. The marketing and pre-release information of this film was a complete and utter blatant lie. Everything you were told was a lie. In the first act, there is actually a semblance of brilliance of the film. The first hour of the film, up until Tony's house getting blown up, it feels like Iron Man 1 again. There's a perfect blend of action, drama, and comedy, and all three of them are done spectacularly well. It feels like they've perfectly recaptured the magic of Iron Man 1 while introducing the character development of Iron Man 1, the inner turmoil of Tony Stark, and they recaptured that magic that many people, including myself, felt Iron Man 2 wasn't capable of capturing. And then once Tony's house is blown up, the film just goes completely off the rails. Stuff just happens. The comedy is shoehorned into every scene, and that's not to say that the comedy's bad. The comedy remains funny throughout the entire film. However, they shoehorn it into as many scenes as possible just to distract you from the film's many glaring problems, and it almost worked. Like, the scenes were so funny, I just turned my brain off and enjoyed everything that was coming at me at the screen. And then, when I actually thought about the film, I realized that the comedy is there just to distract you. It's shoehorned into every scene. It compromises the action. It severely undermines any dramatic tension in the film. It single-handedly makes the most gut-wrenching moment in the film completely pointless because there's like 50 gags after it. And yeah, the comedy ends up really hurting this film, and it felt like the crew knew that the story has these problems, and so they try to put in as much funny stuff in there just to distract you from it. And the marketing, pre-release information was all just a load of bullshit. It's a lie. I'm never going to trust the Marvel guys ever again, because the marketing team behind this film were either complete incompetent morons, because they were promoting a completely different film than the one we actually got in the end, or they just blatantly lied to us. Either way, I'm not trusting anything Kevin Feige or any of his directors say about any Marvel film pre-release, and that's the end of that. But now to the actual problems of the film. So the comedy is shoehorned into every scene, and that severely undermines all the dramatic tension, and it makes some of the action scenes kind of ridiculous, and not in that superhero ridiculous kind of way, in that way that it's really forced, and it really did, like, you really just couldn't leave a gag out there. Do you really need to put a goddamn gag in every scene? It gets really annoying later on. But another problem with this film is actually Tony Stark. Tony Stark doesn't lose anything in this film. Nothing. He doesn't lose his girlfriend. He doesn't lose his best friend. He doesn't lose his company. Sure, some of his older armors get blown up, but he can easily replace those. I mean, he doesn't lose anything. He doesn't ever get into a situation where his mistakes caused the people most important to him to suffer. He never goes through some intense emotional or psychological or physical trauma or pain that would really make him, reevaluate himself like it did in Iron Man 1. And that's just a gargantuan missed opportunity. Tony just acts like a complete asshole in this film, and in the end he gets completely rewarded for it, and I really didn't like that, because there was a perfect opportunity to make Tony grow as a person and actually develop him as a character, and it's completely missed here. The attack on his home was the perfect moment for this, because Tony decides that he just can't let the Mandarin do what he's doing anymore, and he challenges him. He basically tells Mandarin his home address in the scene in the trailer where all those reporters are around him. He basically tells the Mandarin, "I'm not afraid of you. I challenge you to a final battle. I will face you down and I will take you down. And here's my address. Come and get me if you want me, you son of a bitch." He basically tells him that. And when his home is under attack, Pepper is in the home with him. Now, Pepper should have died in this scene. Pepper should have died, and it would have been perfect, because Tony's recklessness cost him the most important thing in his life. And he tells her that she's the most precious thing in the world to him. And that was the perfect opportunity for some real gut-wrenching drama. Tony's recklessness resulting in the death of the woman he loved the most. And the film just completely tosses that great opportunity down the toilet. No one gets hurt. By the end of the film, Tony doesn't lose anything. He hasn't learned anything from his mistakes or from his past experiences, and he just gets rewarded for acting like a reckless asshole who endangered the lives of his friends and the woman he loved the most. So there is no character arc, there is no character development, and you get the point. Nothing's done with Tony Stark. He's just the same old Tony we've seen before, and by the third time you see Tony acting like an asshole, it's not charming anymore. It comes off really forced, and it makes him really goddamn unlikable. Another problem is what they did with Mandarin. Now, many people compared Mandarin to Bane from Dark Knight Rises, and that was justifiable so. He was like this Middle Eastern terrorist who had this big grudge against America. What this grudge was, we don't know, because the film never bothered to give him any sort of motivation for what he was doing. But I'll get to the reason behind that later. So he comes off as this threatening, cold-blooded bastard who's willing to bring down America by any means necessary. He considers himself a teacher. He considers himself that he's teaching America how to live properly, like he's showing them just how full of crap they are and how full of lies they are. And it was really, really fascinating. Ben Kingsley did a fantastic job with the Mandarin. Then there was a point in the film where they did something to Mandarin that was so shocking and so horrible, I literally sat there with my mouth gaping open, and I just told myself, this can't be happening. This has to be a dream. This has to be an illusion. This has to be a trick. It's just as bad as the scene in X-Men Last Stand where Jean Grey kills Cyclops. It comes out of nowhere. It's so horribly shocking, and not in the good way. It's so contrived, so unbelievable, that up until the end of the film, you're just going to keep questioning it. This can't be real. This can't be real. Please, God, tell me there's some sort of twist to the twist. Please tell me this isn't happening. Then the film ends. The post-credit scene doesn't rectify the issue, and you realize, holy shit, they actually did that to the Mandarin. My God, who the hell thought this was a good idea? It's just as bad, if not worse, than the scene in X-Men 3 where Jean kills Cyclops. It's just as bad, and I can guarantee you there's going to be a shitstorm with people who particularly like the Mandarin, and and it's going to cause them to hate this film. I can already tell you, there will be a massive fan shitstorm. Once this movie comes out, people see what they've done with Mandarin, and they're going to hate it. I can guarantee you this. And to add insult to injury, the film tries to make light of it by, again, shoehorning in as much comedy as possible with the Mandarin so that we can forget about how terrible it is. And again, it almost worked. And then I remembered just what a horrible change it was. So yeah, screw you, Shane Black. Your shoehorned in comedy didn't save your mediocre script, and it sure as hell didn't help your terrible plot twist and change to Mandarin. So screw you, man. Screw you. Another thing that really doesn't work in this film is Extremis. Like, I can't remember this particular thing, but apparently Extremis was supposed to be, you know, kind of adapted into this film. The only thing from Extremis, from the storyline of Extremis, which is arguably the greatest Iron Man storyline ever told, is actually the actual Extremis serum. Now, in the comic books, the official description of Extremis was purposefully left vague so that different writers could decide what they want to do with it, and that's fine. However, the film gives Extremis an official description. It basically tells us that in our brains, there is this empty spot, and with Extremis, we can basically cause humanity to evolve and give them, you know, the ability, like Wolverine, like this massive healing factor. Like, you can lose your entire arm and it'll grow back. You can lose like half your face and it'll come back. It'll grow back in a few seconds. And then the film does some weird stuff with Extremis. Like, how the fuck does healing factor allow you to control your body temperature? Like, every time an Extremis person uses their powers, they glow red, and apparently their heat temperature grows so much they can burn through steel. I don't even understand how does healing factor let you turn into Magma Man all of a sudden. And to add insult to injury, one of these guys actually breathes fire like a dragon. Like, and again, I ask you, how the fuck does healing factor let you control your body temperature and turn your arms and legs and stuff into magma and let you breathe fire? It doesn't make any sense. And Extremis in this film is there for the sole reason so that we don't have another generic Iron Man villain who's going to use Tony's technology against him. We had that with Justin Hammer in 2. We had that with Obadiah Stane in Iron Man 1. That easily could have been the case here, but the Extremis serum isn't used to help Tony like it is in the comic book, because in the comic book, Tony gets the ever-loving shit beaten out of him, and he has to take a modified version of Extremis to save himself from dying. And once he gets Extremis, that basically allows him to control his armor with his mind, and it makes him really physically powerful, faster, stronger and stuff, and lets him beat the bad guy of the Extremis story. That's not the case here. Here, in the first 5 minutes, you can see Tony putting sensors all over his body, and with his mind, he can use these sensors to call pieces of the Mark 42 armor that you see in all the promotional material. So, you've just pretty much rendered Extremis' whole thing with Tony pretty much pointless, and that's the whole point. That's the whole problem with Extremis. It's pointless. It didn't need to be there, and it's just in the film so that we don't have another generic villain who's just going to use Tony's tech against him. Now, this may be a problem with Iron Man in general because the character just has a weak rogues gallery, but when you killed like 2 of his well-known bad guys and turned the third one, aka the Mandarin, into a complete fucking joke, what the hell are you going to be left to work with? And this whole change from this whole thing, we're not just going to have another generic Iron Man villain who's just going to use Tony's tech against him all over again, could have been rectified if the true main antagonist of the film was actually original and something, you know, different from all the other Iron Man villains. He has the motivations of Obadiah Stane, which is, I'm going to use this serum to cause war, and then I'm going to sell it to the highest bidder, and thus I'm going to make money by creating supply and demand. That's Obadiah Stane. I have a personal grudge against Tony Stark. That's from Whiplash. And then I hate that. No, Tony Stark's sort of my rival, and I'm going to use his genius to basically help myself make more money by creating supply and demand, and that's basically Justin Hammer's whole motivation from 2. So that makes him the most generic Iron Man villain yet, and it just adds more insult to injury. Like, there's nothing unique about this guy, and I swear to God, if the actor portraying him didn't do a good performance as he did, I probably would have hated the character even more, but despite the great performance the actor delivers, it still doesn't change the fact that his character is unbelievably generic. And it just makes me wonder, why the fuck did you change Mandarin? Why couldn't you just keep him the same? It makes no sense. I don't like it. And another issue with this film is actually the organization of the 10 Rings. Now, this is another thing the marketing, of course, made a big deal out of, but in the end it actually creates a lot of problems. So the 10 Rings are led by the Mandarin, supposedly, and they've been pulling the strings since Iron Man 1. So, in this film, it's firmly established that Extremis is not perfect. They need Tony's genius to perfect the serum. And that just made me question, alright, you need Tony to perfect the serum, and you've been working on it for close to a decade, and you've had a working version of it for years now. So why the fuck did you keep Tony locked up in a cave instead of immediately dragging him to your hidden base and make him work for Extremis? Why did you keep him there for months if you were the ones who kidnapped him? Why not just immediately take him to your hidden base, kidnap Pepper, Rhodey, and then make Tony work for you while you hold them hostage? And that just creates even more problems than it solves. It also creates the issue of how the hell did Whiplash get into contact with these guys? Because the 10 Rings is a secret organization. In this film, we know that the American government is incapable of finding the Mandarin or any of his agents. They basically send Rhodey as Iron Patriot on a wild goose chase across the entire Middle East and make him look like a complete idiot who's just flying all over the place like a chicken without a head, or no. Well, a fly without a head. Yeah, I screwed up that metaphor, but you get what I mean. He's just flying around without any proper information, so that just makes me question. If the most well-known agents and information broker type dudes, I don't even know what to call them, if the most advanced spying agencies on the planet are unable to find any agents of the 10 Rings, then how the hell is a piss-poor drunk in Russia without any money and without anything to his name gonna suddenly get into contact with one of their agents? Like, what? how does that even work? Like, how did you even find this guy? How did this guy find you? That doesn't make any sense. And this film actually creates more problems for itself, and it actually creates problems for the previous Iron Man films by creating plot holes in them. So not only is this film fucking up itself, it's fucking up the previous films of the series. Isn't that the mark of a truly great sequel? I know, right? It's totally the mark of a truly great sequel. And then the last act. Oh, the last 10 minutes make no sense whatsoever. Like, throughout the last 10 minutes, I was just asking myself, how did he do that? How did she know that? How did he know how to do that? Was it because of this, or was it because of that? How did that not kill him? Why did that kill him? That's stupid. Why is he doing this? I thought that was impossible. I thought he already established that couldn't be done. How did he figure out how to do that to her? Why is all of this happening? This doesn't make any sense. Why are you making a big speech about losing everything, but you didn't lose anything in the goddamn movie? And why the fuck are you doing that to your armors, you unbelievable dumbass? Wow, the last 5 to 10 minutes are just filled with so much random stuff. It just doesn't make any sense. Wow, I just couldn't wrap my head around it. There was just so much random out of the blue stuff going on. I just said fuck it, and yeah, the ending left a pretty bitter taste in my mouth. The ending really didn't resolve anything. The film just sort of ends on some kind of dramatic speech about how you can't take Tony from Iron Man. You can take his company, the love of his life, his best friends, but you can't take away me being Iron Man. But you didn't lose anything in the film. You haven't learned anything, so why the hell should I take your whole big speech at the end seriously? Oh god, cut to credits. And even the post-credits scene didn't save the film. Like, the post-credits scene is hilarious as hell, but the post-credits scenes, the Marvel ones, all served a purpose. They served to world build the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In Iron Man 1, in the post-credits scene, we saw Nick Fury tell him about Avengers. Iron Man 2, we see Thor's hammer landing in the desert, which leads to Thor. And then that leads to Tony going to General Ross and Incredible Hulk and telling him about the Avengers Initiative. Then the Thor post-credits scene leads to Captain America. Captain America leads to Avengers, and all these films also led up to Avengers, and everything was sort of tied, and it was great world building. The post-credits scene here doesn't build towards anything. And I really hope this isn't like a cop-out. I really hope this isn't like the shawarma scene in Avengers 2, where they're going to film an additional post-credits scene, and then I'm going to be forced to watch through this mediocre film all over again just so I can see an extra scene of the film that's going to lead to Thor or whatever or something or other. Iron Man 3 is... Alright, I talked a lot of shit about this film. It's like I said before, this is not a bad film. It's okay. It's not good. It's not bad. It's just okay. What saves it? All right. Despite the comedy being really shoehorned in and it really undermining the drama and the tension, the comedy is really goddamn funny here. Like this is easily one of the funniest movies I've seen in a long time. All of the performances were fantastic. Robert Downey Jr.'s different performance, at least in the first act, showed that he can pull off the many different aspects of Tony Stark. Like, he isn't just limited to acting like the smart-ass playboy prick Tony Stark that we know. Like, he can play a serious or hurt or sad Tony Stark, and that he can add a lot of dimension to the character and pull it off properly. Don Cheadle, who plays Rhodey, the dude really nailed it this time. Like, I was iffy on him in Iron Man 2, but his interaction with Tony really made them look like friends. You could really see that he hit his stride and that he's really, gotten into that he's really, figured out how to play Rhodey, and I just think he's the perfect War Machine. I don't even remember the guy from the first film anymore. Like, when I think of live-action War Machine, I think of Don Cheadle, because his performance in this film really left that big of an impression on me, and I thought he was great. Guy Pearce was fantastic. Ben Kingsley was great as the Mandarin until they fucked him up. Ugh. And Happy Hogan had a lot of funny scenes too. Like, he isn't in the movie a lot. I mean, Jon Favreau as Happy Hogan, he isn't in the movie a lot, but when he is, it's pretty hilarious. And his favorite show being that was just hysterical, because my mom and sister watched that show all the time, and I just thought that was hilarious. I'm not going to tell you what the show is, but if you've ever seen it, and when you find out that Happy Hogan, the big, tough security guard, bodyguard dude, actually loves it, you're going to laugh your ass off. And I just thought that was pretty cool. The action scenes are, for the most part, pretty damn good. Like, the choreography is fast, it's dynamic, there's plenty of eye-popping explosions. All of the armors look fantastic, which is kind of a problem. Like, a lot of movie armors can look fake or plastic. Here they actually look like metal. The Extremis soldiers, despite them making no sense, they actually look really cool when they're all glowing red and they have the big red Sith eyes, and I just thought they look pretty cool. We see that Tony's actually learned some stuff from Avengers. He's actually learned, a little martial arts. He knows how to handle a gun and stuff. Like, there was one part in the movie that really reminded me of James Bond, and it just made me think, wow, Robert Downey Jr. should totally be picked for, like, the next James Bond, because there's, like, this whole part in this movie where he just takes out a bunch of guards, all stealth espionage style, but he's all slick and stuff, like, and I just thought to myself, if you gave him a suit and a British accent, I would have totally thought for like 5 minutes that was another James Bond film. So yeah, Robert Downey Jr. for the next James Bond. Make it happen, please. That scene proved that he can pull it off. So yeah, what would I give Iron Man 3? In all honesty, I would probably give it a 6 or a 7. Like I said, it's not a terrible film, but in the end, it's not a pretty good one. This is probably my least favorite of all the Marvel films, because Iron Man is my favorite character of all the Marvel Cinematic Universe characters. I just really love him that much, and to see him be done in such an film really left a bad taste in my mouth. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't the worst of the MCU films. That honor still belongs to Captain America, a film that was so tedious, so boring. I, honest to God, walked out of the theater halfway through the film because nothing happened. I didn't give a shit about anyone or anything that was going on, and I just didn't think it was worth it. So yeah, Captain America First Avenger is still the worst in quality, in my opinion, of all the MCU films. Iron Man 3 is kind of like they're in the middle with Thor. It has some pretty good stuff to it, but it also has some big glaring issues that keep it back from greatness. And I really hope Robert Downey Jr. still gets another shot as Iron Man, at least one more Iron Man film, because if this is supposed to be his swan song to the character, putting aside Avengers 2, if this is supposed to be like his last Iron Man solo film, I will be so disappointed, because I really hope that he stays on for at least one more Iron Man solo film so that we can get a proper badass swan song that Robert Downey Jr. deserves. Because if he leaves Iron Man in the solo films after this one, I will be so sad, because it would just not be a great swan song and a great way for him to, leave the character. That's just my opinion. But yeah, I just think this wouldn't be a great swan song as Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, and that's just how I feel. So yeah, Iron Man 3, it's a 6 or 7 out of 10. It's okay. If you turn your brain off and leave it at the door and never think about this film ever again, you will love it for the rest of your life. If you put any thought into this film, you will notice a lot of problems, about the film itself, about the people who were making it, how they blatantly bullshitted us, how they basically lied to us, or that the marketing team were complete idiots. But yeah, those are my 2 cents on Iron Man 3. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know I'm gonna get a lot of crap from some of you, but I hope I at least gave you some good arguments for why I thought this film really doesn't deserve the praise it's getting from other critics. Like, I can't believe this thing has a 92 on Rotten Tomatoes. That just blows my mind. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I'm E. Crollo, or the Game Raging Psycho, and I'll see you next time, hopefully. Bye.